if you understood the protections under the laws, you would make a complaint such as, hey, Jim, I announced my pregnancy, 5 weeks ago. I'm starting to notice a change in how I'm being treated since then. Before I announced my pregnancy, I was given, all these great opportunities to participate on these projects. Now I'm being relegated to this kind of menial tasks that are for someone much lower than me. Now you've probably made a protected complaint under the law. So if your employer takes some sort of adverse action, right? Typically a termination, could be a demotion, taking away certain job responsibilities, then that would be actionable under the law because you've now complained about discrimination.
Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Spaghetti on the Wall back with another one. Taylor Crabill's in the house. What's up, Taylor?
How you doing, Armando? Doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm glad you're here. And we're going to hop into it because lots of things happening. This is a really crazy, it's a crazy time in entrepreneurship, business, the climate in terms of, employee rights and things like, and just how to navigate all of these things and what are people's rights and what should they be looking out for. So I was really happy to bring you on to really discuss, what you do in terms of employment law, how you help people, and how you keep, these entrepreneurs and companies truthful and and continuing to do the right things. So Taylor, give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll roll into the other stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I am the founder of Crabill PLLC. It's an employment law firm based out of Florida and New York, and we represent individuals who've been discriminated against, retaliated against at work, suffered sexual harassment, sexual assault. We also do wage and hour type cases where people maybe haven't been paid their minimum wage or overtime wages, other wage violations as well. And so, yeah, we help people navigate those difficult situations. Most of the time, that takes the form of a lawsuit against the employer. But there's so much that goes into it even before even contacting a lawyer that people need to know in order to ensure that they're being fully protected under the law.
And so the people that you guys are helping are anybody that's employed, not necessarily subcontractors.
Yeah, so there are protections for employees under the various employment laws. There are protections for independent contractors as well. But one issue that we see come up time and time again, and particularly in connection with wage and hour cases, is, are you actually an independent contractor, right? There are various tests under the employment laws to determine whether you have those protections as an employee or if you are an independent contractor. So that issue actually comes up quite a bit in our cases.
And so why, I guess you don't know what you don't know, right? Like in employment law, it's one of those things that's just like, I'm working for this company, something doesn't feel right. I don't, I'm scared to lose my job. I'm scared to ruffle feathers. I'm scared to do these things. And it's like, where's my mindset and what should I be looking out for? That like kind of gives me these ideas to go, okay, yeah, maybe my rights are being infringed upon, and these are things that I should be looking out for.
Yeah, so kind of first off, most people who contact us, it's typically their first time dealing with an employment law issue. Sometimes someone has dealt with something, but typically it's the first time. And so, there's no reason for someone to go out there and, study the employment laws before having to deal with an issue, right?
Right.
So, the client is learning the law as they're contacting us, right? So, like you said, right? Maybe something doesn't feel right. Something in your stomach's like, what's going on here? I feel like something's off. Um, and you start to notice a change, right? And if we get into an example, if we take the example of, pregnant employee, she just became pregnant, maybe is announcing her pregnancy in a couple of weeks. She announces her pregnancy maybe to HR, to a supervisor, and then all of a sudden starts to notice a change, right? All of a sudden, was this high performing employee constantly received praise for her work, but after announcing pregnancy, being micromanaged, being criticized for things that she wasn't being criticized before, right? Taken off of important assignments, right? These are all sorts of things that it's, well, what's the difference? What's changed here now? And you're looking to that announcement of the pregnancy, and that can happen across the different protected characteristics, right? Based on race, religion, age, disability. If you're noticing a change in how you've been treated before, something's come up, right? Pregnancy, disability, to be how you're being treated now, that can point towards, hey, something's off here. There might be some discrimination going on.
Right.
Or if you're being treated differently compared to someone outside of your protected class, right? If you're a black employee and you notice that you're not getting the same opportunities as a white employee, that could be something to point towards discrimination.
And so these are some of the pain points and some of the problems. What happens when people don't take action, I guess?
Yeah, so you are potentially leaving protections on the table, right? So the the most typical situation is someone gets terminated and they feel like something has been going wrong for months, and then it ultimately leads to a termination, right? The employer builds up some sort of record of poor performance to justify a termination, and then the termination happens, and that's typically when we get the phone call and see if this is a situation we can help with. Do you have any legal claims under the law? But before that happens, there's a whole chunk of time where you could be taking steps to protect yourself, right? Whether that's making complaints to HR, making complaints to a supervisor, really making complaints to someone who can do something about it, right? Hey, HR, I noticed that I am being treated differently than, ABC person outside of my protected category, right? And so by making these protected complaints, you're gaining protection under the employment laws, right? If you make this complaint and the employer turns around and fires you for making that complaint, that's its own separate legal claim aside from even the discrimination claim. So, um, making sure that you have an understanding of, there's something going on here. How do I gain these protections under the law? And then taking those steps is critical.
Is there a statute of limitations based on like when if you get fired or if a time limit that
Yeah, there
you're not
certainly
eligible?
is. Under the various laws, there's different statutes and limitations, right? If we look at Title VII, which is a federal anti-discrimination law, anti-retaliation law that arose out of the civil rights movement, you need to file a complaint either within 180 days or 300 days of the discriminatory incident. So that might seem like a long time, but that goes pretty quickly, right? And so, in particular, with the federal laws, which tend to have this shorter statute of limitations period, you need to act quickly.
And so how often do you see somebody coming in and like way after the fact coming in and you're like, sorry, like it's just kind of past that point?
Yeah, a good amount of the time. I mean, you'll have, and the important thing to understand is you might not get along with somebody, you know, for whatever reason, right? You and your supervisor don't get along, but just not getting along with someone or having, a bad relationship with someone, there's nothing unlawful about that, right? And most people are employees at will, right? Some people have uh, employment contracts, maybe for terms of months or years, but most people are employee at will, meaning you could be fired for any reason, right? So um, if you're complaining to HR and you say, hey, Jim supervisor, I really don't get along with him. He's not been treating me well over the past several weeks. I really don't like it. What are you going to do about it, right? Nothing about that complaint would be considered what protected activity under the law. But if you understood the protections under the laws, you would make a complaint such as, "Hey Jim, I announced my pregnancy, 5 weeks ago. I'm starting to notice a change in how I'm being treated since then. Before I announced my pregnancy, I was given, all these great opportunities to participate on these projects. Now I'm being relegated to this kind of menial tasks that are for someone much lower than me. Now you've probably made a protected complaint under the law. So if your employer takes some sort of adverse action, right? Typically a termination, could be a demotion, taking away certain job responsibilities, um, then that would be actionable under the law because you've now complained about discrimination.
And so, like, I live in Louisiana, and they always say this is a right to work state. What does that mean? That this is a right to work state?
Yeah, right to work state has more to do with the labor side of the law rather than the individual employee rights. Right to work, meaning that you have the ability to work irrespective of whether you're in a union or not, right? There are certain situations if you're part of a union in certain states where the union acts as a unit, whether going on strike, and then there's votes around that. If you're in a right to work state, you can't be prohibited from working.
Gotcha. So it has nothing to do with employment law.
It's labor law. It's certainly connected, but it's different than the sort of individual employee protections that we've been talking about.
So can you give me a story of somebody you guys have helped in the past and what that outcome was like?
Yeah, I can give you an example of a case that I'm working on right now. I represent an individual named Robert Jackson. He was an employee in the analytics department at the ACLU, the ACLU's national office in New York City. And he was hired in fall of 2019, started working on the job, getting up to speed. And he's a black man and was selected to attend this event in Montgomery, Alabama, about how the ACLU can help the Black community, right? Different initiatives we can work on in the coming year, how we can really use our resources and skills, expertise to help the Black community. And while he was there, a high level official at the ACLU had taken a picture with Jeff Sessions, who is the former Attorney General under former President Trump. Is also a former senator from the state of Alabama. He's had certain connections to some racist behavior, and so it was a bit shocking that someone from the ACLU had posed for a picture with Sessions and kind of struck up a conversation between Mr. Jackson and his colleagues about, hey, listen, we're trying to see what we can do for marginalized communities outside the ACLU, but what's going on internally, right? And so they kind of took a look and saw a lack of black leadership at the ACLU, particularly black male leadership. And so during this conference in Alabama, they made complaints, right? They called out, hey, we're noticing a lack of black leadership here. Here are some initiatives that we think
At the ACLU.
At the ACLU, yes, yeah,
What?
yeah. Not
That's
what you would think, but
crazy.
yeah,
It doesn't make any sense. All right.
you wouldn't think so, but this sort of stuff can be everywhere, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, he made his complaints. Comes back to the office, and his supervisor is telling him to be, they're continuing these discussions about how they can, with HR, how can we improve what's going on here at the ACLU? And his supervisor tells him, be quiet, be the cooler head in the room, kind of, the idea is you said what you said, and
Sure.
leave it. He continues obviously to participate in these discussions. Long story short, over the next couple of weeks, he's demoted. Right, he's demoted four levels, salary slashed in half.
Wow.
But he's someone who's passionate. He's passionate about civil rights. He's passionate about There's a reason you joined the ACLU, right? You're trying to participate in that mission for the most
Right.
part, right? And so he agrees to stay on, and they couldn't get rid of him over the next several months, and ultimately led to his termination. Um, and now we are potentially knocking on the doors of trial. The main, I guess, discovery part of the case is done, and we're before the court on some motions. But if we get past this point, we'll be proceeding to trial.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess you guys are suing, right?
Yeah. So kind of, I guess if we kind of tie it into what I was talking about before, right? When when Mr. Jackson was at the conference and he starts complaining about the lack of black leadership, he's now engaged in what's considered a protected activity, right? Complaining about some sort of discrimination, right? That is a protected thing. You can't fire somebody for doing that, or if you do, you face a legal claim, right?
Right.
Um, and then his continuing to participate in those efforts, again, that's we're arguing that that was continued protected activities, and being demoted and being fired for doing that unlawful. So in that way, we are pursuing legal claims based on discrimination against him as a black man, but also retaliation for engaging in those protected activities.
Gotcha. Um, that's really honorable. I'm glad you're handling that. And so, if people are in this, and you guys handle all of Florida and New York, like the whole state.
Yeah, I mean, we'll represent people nationwide depending on what comes through the door, but our primary practices are in Florida and New York.
And so, how often does it go to trial?
Almost never, right?
Yeah.
Especially in these civil cases, they'll end up settling at some point. There's obviously no guarantees. We can never predict what an adversary might what their threshold might be for resolving. Maybe they want to see the case go all the way through to trial, but there's risks on both sides going to trial. Whether you have the best case in the world, or at least feel you do, you could still lose the case, right?
Yeah.
So most cases end up resolving. It's about where cases can settle before even filing, right? So our typical procedure is, someone calls in, we assess their case, determine, you have legitimate legal claims, something that we're able to help you with. We'll send out a detailed letter. Hey company, here are the legal claims on behalf of my client. Is there an opportunity to resolve this case before filing something public in court? And so cases can resolve in that sort of posture. And sometimes there are negotiations, but you don't end up reaching a resolution. In which case, then you file the lawsuit. But just because it failed there, you had to file a lawsuit, and maybe you even had to litigate the case for months or years. There could still be a possibility to resolve. You could resolve during trial, right? You could end up reaching a settlement while the case is being tried before the court.
Wow. So you decided to leave the corporate job and start your own thing. Is this your first move into entrepreneurship?
It is, yeah, and we're a couple of months in. It's been very exciting. I've been doing the legal work for a long time now, but now getting into the business side of things as well. It's certainly nice being your own boss, but it comes with a lot of challenges as well. But I'm enjoying it and hoping that we can build a place that continues the work of trying to help people. And so that's what I'll try to do.
What's the mindset like? When you're opening up a new business.
There's, I guess, a lot of different, anxieties over it and doing something new, and but just like most things, I feel like you just need to jump in. You need to jump in and kind of do it and tackle things, and you'll find solutions to problems. You'll learn stuff as you go along, um, and so it's been an exciting challenge, and I'm enjoying it, and we'll keep going.
What do you think is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to opening up your own firm?
Yeah, finding the time to put in the work to have that foundation, right? You're going to want to, launch your law firm ready to go, right? Have a website ready to go. You need to do the various filings with the state departments to make sure that you're getting your business recognized. And it's maybe a lot more work than you realize, but really making sure that you have that foundation of what you want your firm to be, how you're going to, what's your strategy for making sure that people are calling in, you're getting cases, and so that you can kind of build on it as you're growing.
I love talking about startup and
Hmm.
especially because I just got back from that Exit Planning Institute over there in Marco Island, which is where you're close to.
Yep.
Um, it's so. Are you working with like the end in mind, or are you just focused on the startup? And what I mean is, like talking to all these exit planners, and financial advisor and M&A advisors and all these business
Hmm.
brokers. They're all talking about all of these boomers, right? Baby boomers that are now in selling their business and getting ready to sell. And they're like, Armando, are you like thinking about, what this looks like when you're ready to sell? And I was like, no, I hadn't really thought of that. You know what I mean? But now I am, right? It's all like, oh,
Right.
wow. Okay. How do I create the system so that it doesn't need to be Armando
Hmm.
that makes the business go? So are you thinking about like the exit strategy in this startup phase?
It's it's something that I will eventually could consider, and it's funny you say that because it's one of the things that in doing the research and making sure that I have everything in line and for starting the business, it was something that came up that was unexpected, right? Even with starting the business, having that exit plan soon, whether you have it when you're or an idea of it, right? When you're starting your business or soon after, it wasn't something that I had thought of going into it, but something that you kind of understand the importance of even from the early stages of the business. So yeah, something I'll try to figure out, and I'm sure that changes over time. But as long as you're have that in mind and you're working a plan towards it, you know should be a lot more helpful than trying to figure it out last minute.
Yeah. Do you have like the cutoff time? I know I'm the CEO of my business, and it is a 24/7 thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it's what happens when you're, when you're in entrepreneurship. But do you have a time where you're like, all right, I'm cutting it off, and I'm letting it go?
It depends, right? In especially dealing with litigation, you're dealing with different deadlines. So there could be a week where I have a bunch of deadlines and I'm very busy. Obviously, you still carve out time for the family and time for other things, but there are going to be weeks that are busier than others. When you get, uh, even if there's not something crazy going on with the cases at the time, then you're focusing on the business, right? Um, how to how to build it, maybe how to add people on, how to grow, working on the vision, stuff like that. So yeah, it's nonstop. It's 24/7, but there's a lot of rewards that could come with it, and I think different challenges that make working more exciting than just doing the day-to-day work.
What's the first hire that, that you have to have when you're opening up, in your opinion, a new firm?
Yeah, support staff, and in the law firm context, whether it's some sort of virtual assistant or in-person assistant, paralegal, someone who can take saving documents, for example. you're dealing in the legal world, you're dealing with documents, hundreds, thousands of pages of documents, sometimes in one case, right? And it all needs to be saved somewhere. You need to make sure that everything, is where it needs to be. It's labeled correctly. All that takes a lot of time, right? So if you can make those hires to take those sort of things off your plate, you can then, focus on the substance of the legal work, focus on the growing the business activities. Those I think are probably the most important first hires. But again, I'm new to this, and I'm sure it'll change as I go. But
Sure.
that's at least what I'm understanding off the bat.
And so where do you see this, where do you see your firm being in the next 5 years?
Yeah, next 5 years, I'd like to grow. I'd like to bring some people on that have the same sort of mindset in wanting to help people. Right. Ultimately, that is, I think, the most important thing that I do as an employment lawyer representing individuals is helping people. So, people come to you in a tough time, not knowing anything about the legal process or the laws involved, and they trust you to guide them to hopefully some sort of resolution where they can, maybe get a little bit of money to help them and then forget about this terrible experience and move on. So
Yeah.
you can bring in some like-minded people that support that vision and that's something they want to pursue. And I think we can help some people out along the way.
Is this something that you see like having multiple offices and going into different states? Do you
Yeah,
see something like that?
yeah, I'd like to. I mean, we are already in Florida and New York, and I'd like to expand that with some more attorneys. But definitely, I mean, who knows, right? We'll kind of see how it goes, but if there's opportunities to do that and kind of the right people uh, that might fit into those spots that could help lead those efforts, then great. I'm definitely open to it.
Heck yeah. And what are the how do people work with you?
Oh, what do you mean?
So do they is there like a you meet with them, you see, is there like a meeting discovery call? How does the process work?
Yeah, so people will reach out, whether it's through, a lot of contacts come through other attorneys, right? You have a network, and maybe like you mentioned a friend who has a personal injury lawsuit, maybe getting employment cases, and okay, I'm going to send this to the person that I know does a good job on employment cases, right? So that's one way that cases come in, but organically as well through searching online. But yeah, people will call in and we'll have a discussion, right, about their situation. And you want to get into it in a fairly detailed way to understand the facts. What are the weaknesses, strengths of the case? What is their value here? Do I have a real opportunity to help this person? And so that can take anywhere from a half an hour, maybe longer, depending on the circumstances. But after that, have the initial call, maybe, get some documents. People sometimes have audio recordings, review that. And, then the person wants to jump on, then they sign on an agreement with the firm, and then we're off to the races. Then we're starting that sort of detailed letter I mentioned earlier, um, putting in a lot of work to make sure that they know that we're serious and that we're going to litigate these claims aggressively. Um, and yeah, that's typically how it starts.
Is it like personal injury where you don't get paid until you get them the compensation?
Yeah, almost entirely, especially with these individual cases, right? Individual discrimination cases or multi-plaintiff cases. The average person, unsurprisingly, doesn't have the sort of money to put up legal fees in the ways that some of the large companies do, can pay these large law firms on a per hour basis. So the way that people on the plaintiff side, on the employee side, represent people for the most part is contingency fee, right? So you know, as the attorney, will collect a percentage of a recovery that we're able to get. But until that point, you're not paying a monthly fee. You're not paying filing fees or anything like that for the case. All that is sort of baked into the resolution down the road.
Gotcha. Very cool. I didn't know that. And how do they reach you, man?
Yeah, you can certainly get onto the website. There's a submission form to be able to include some details about your situation. That's often helpful for making the call a little bit more productive and getting through things a little bit quicker. Can certainly call in as well. We're ready to take calls and listen to what situations people are dealing with and seeing if we can help and how we can help.
Are you on LinkedIn and all that?
Yep, LinkedIn. We've started doing some YouTube videos. We have some shorts up now, and we'll try to add to that as well, providing information to people. But yeah, we're on LinkedIn. Taylor Crabill, you'll find me there. The website for the law firm is crabillawfirm.com. Our number is 727-335-1030.
That'll work. If y'all are in the New York and Florida area, hit up Taylor if you feel like you're being wronged. Taylor, I appreciate you being here, man.
I appreciate it as well.
I learned a lot today, and I'm going to be in contact with you, so stick around.
Sounds good.
And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment for your production needs. We got you. Podcasts, organic social, you know what we do. And keep watching. We'll see y'all next time.